My name is Mary Brownlee, licensed professional counselor and trauma therapist. Today we're going to talk about spiritual narcissism. What does it look like? What is a spiritual narcissist? What type of behaviors do they exhibit? And what kind of damage being in a relationship with somebody who is a spiritual narcissist can do to somebody? My job as a trauma therapist is to help people overcome relationship trauma. That's what complex trauma is, actually. It's damage done by the people we love the most, oftentimes, that we're in relationships with over long periods of time. And unfortunately, that's where our body's fight or flight system and attachment system and our social needs and emotional needs get met within relationships. And so what happens is when we're in relationships with people who are incredibly harmful and abusive, it already damages our nervous system and can cause things like complex PTSD and borderline personality disorder and other trauma-related disorders. But spiritual narcissism has its own special flavor, and I see damage from this type of abuse that is of a different nature and sometimes more insidious and more, I would say the layers are deeper than, say, a regular narcissist. So spiritual narcissists really hit in the layers of like spirituality, purpose and meaning, a belief in the afterlife, God, like our own personal relationship with a higher power. And so a lot of my clients, and myself included, have experiences with people who both were, say, a parent, but also spiritually abusive. And so this is really what we're talking about today. So if you've had relationships with loved ones, especially a parent that was not only narcissistic, but specifically used spiritual abuse, you will find this video helpful, because how we navigate finding ourselves and loving ourselves and potentially having purpose and meaning and a sense of the afterlife after spiritual abuse is a whole other topic entirely and very important. I have another video about spiritual abuse as well that can be very helpful for people who've had this type of abuse. I'll link it below in the description. So feel free to check that out if this topic is important to you. And let's go ahead and get started. So a spiritual narcissist will share a lot in common with regular narcissists. I have another video on covert versus overt narcissists. If you're interested in that, check that out. I'll drop it in the description below. But spiritual narcissism really takes on a different flavor, of course, related to spirituality and God and religious beliefs. So that's really where the spiritual part comes in. So they are going to believe that they are superior to other people. I mean, all narcissists really believe they're superior, and there's grandiosity and entitlement and all of that. But of course, spiritual narcissists are using religion or whatever their spiritual beliefs are to really put themselves above other people. They're going to seek confirmation of their religious beliefs. They're going to really be ego driven in terms of like, I'm so much better. Look how important I am. Look how special I am. Look how holy I am compared to other people. I'm so pious. I attend church 5 times a week. Oh, you know, all you other people that only attend church once in a while. Oh, you guys are just pretend Catholics or pretend, you know, Protestants or whatever, fill in the blank. So they're very, very judgmental, and they're going to put themselves above other people. Because I like to point out, you know, like people who have an authentic sense of spirituality, it's very heart-centered, right? They're not actually going out of their way to humiliate and criticize and put other people down who have different beliefs or ways of practicing their beliefs. But spiritual narcissism is very ego-driven. It's very egocentric. It's all about me, 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 me. So authentic spirituality is about us. You'll see a lot of us, and they're generally very heart-centered. They love other human beings. They see a lot of similarities between themselves and other human beings. They love to be helpful. They're kind. They're compassionate. You're not going to see that with a spiritual narcissist. It's all about me, 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 and look how amazing I am compared to other people. All right. They claim no one is as special as they are. They are obsessed with fantasies of spiritual greatness. So you will probably see this in how they compare themselves to other people or to other religions, that their religion is so much greater and so much better than anyone else's. And they can trace their religious roots back thousands of years compared to this person's religion or that person's religion. Oh, you know, the only way to get into heaven is through my specific beliefs, you know? So yeah, it's very grandiose. Of course, lacking in empathy. I would like to think authentic spirituality is definitely compassion and full of empathy for other people and human suffering in general. Again, fake spirituality and spiritual narcissism, there's not going to be empathy for other people or their suffering or their well-being. They feel entitled to special treatment from other people and God. This is where you see them blame other people, for example, for, say, you've been abused. Well, that's your fault. You must have been a terrible person in your past life. So there's a lot of judgments here where they truly believe they're superior. And if you're suffering, you've done something to deserve that. And you really should work on that. They're extremely thin-skinned to perceived criticism or being challenged by other people. I mean, narcissists of all flavors are not going to like to be challenged. Oh, no, no, no. So anytime you might even kindly or respectfully try to challenge them in some way or say, no, I disagree with that. Or, can you please not say that? I find that rude or disrespectful or something along those lines. Oh, they will erupt with like narcissistic rage and no doubt flip the script about how you're not as holy as them. And you really need to listen to them because they know what's best for you and for everyone else. They have an excessive need to be admired by other people. Their spirituality is for show. They want other people to see how holy they are, how much they practice, how much of the Bible they read. It's going to be very much in your face, as opposed to like a more authentic sense of spirituality is very quiet. These people are not out trying to convert everybody all the time, and really who they are, their spirituality is expressed authentically through their behavior towards other people and how kind and loving they are. Playing the victim, very much so. When narcissists of any flavor, if they're called out, you're going to see them switch into victim mode and try to get people to feel sorry for them. And, everybody else is so mean to them. That's a common behavior. They're going to really exploit people and manipulate others for their personal gain. So, some of this like cult leaders, for example, there's a lot of exploitation. There's using people to control others and to get things out of other people, whether it's monetary or financial gain or just to feel powerful. Again, the need for power over other people and to be admired and to be fawned over is going to be seen here too with spiritual narcissists. So some examples here of spiritual narcissism is that they're weaponizing their spiritual beliefs against you. So you're going to see lots of shaming. Shame is very predominant. Shame on you. You should be ashamed of yourself. Oh, what would the Lord think if they saw you doing that? Lots of shame prevalent. Lots of verbal abuse, lots of emotional abuse. Threats of damnation. So they're very much heavy on you must be perfect. Do not, in any way make any mistakes. The Lord is a wrathful God. The Lord is a vengeful God. It's very punishing and shaming and criticizing. And notice that it's not very loving and compassionate, interestingly enough. So they're picking things from whatever their religious background is, but they're picking the worst and the darkest and the most shaming, criticizing, abusive, quite frankly, behaviors from, say, the Bible or whatever, religious texts that they're using. They're not using the texts from the religious, beliefs that are kind and non-judgmental and compassionate and accepting and forgiving. Notice they're not using that. They're going to always be using the ones that really are power-driven. Must have power, and how we keep ourselves in power is through shaming others and controlling them and subjugating them and keeping them in line. They're going to put down other people's faiths as inferior to theirs. Theirs is only the one true faith and everybody else is wrong. They're going to boast about how holy and enlightened they are compared to other people, and so they're not humble. You're not going to see humility. They're going to use the Bible or whatever other spiritual texts that they might have to judge and shame, criticize other people. And again, as I mentioned, these texts are taken out of context. They're only using specific passages that back up their very abusive beliefs and not the ones that actually do not preach what they are saying to other people. They tend to only spend time with those they feel are worthy or just like them, right? So maybe they're the one trying to cozy up to the priest or cozy up to the pastor or cozy up to the teacher or the guru or whoever it is. You know, that they want to associate themselves with those they feel are just as holy or superior to them in some way. They try to align themselves with those that they feel are spiritually superior or have power. Again, narcissism is about power and control over other people and about avoiding their own sense of shame and inadequacy by putting other people down. And again, connection, genuine connection with other people is not valued with narcissists of all different types and flavors. Some additional examples here. They have no tolerance or respect for those who believe differently. It's very black and white. So narcissists and personality disorders oftentimes demonstrate very black and white rigid thoughts. So it's either all this or all this. So all good, all bad. They put people in categories. These people are all good. These people are all bad. And so there's very little tolerance for anybody who's different. And again, a lot of contempt, a lot of name calling, put downs, criticisms for those who are different. They lack reason and logic. So this is kind of an interesting one. They believe that their blind faith, their religious or spiritual texts have all the answers for human beings, and that, say, science and even medical doctors or professionals like, psychotherapists or psychologists or psychiatric providers are wrong. They don't have any of the answers for human suffering, and they are of no use and of no help. However, my pastor, Pastor Dan, he holds all the wisdom, and I only talk to Pastor Dan about my problems, even when they've been asked to, for example, by loved ones to please go see a therapist, that this relationship is hurting me. I'm asking her, not begging you to go see a therapist, but oh no, Pastor Dan has all the answers. A therapist doesn't know what they're talking about. So you'll see this very kind of rigidity of outside voices and outside help, including actual professional help. They're again, if it doesn't align with what they feel holds the right and perfect answers, then nope, it's thrown in the trash. And so sometimes even this type of rigidity in their beliefs can translate into horrible, egregious abuse. For example, like medical neglect. I'm sure we've all heard, very rare, thankfully, but stories, for example, of parents whose religious beliefs said their child couldn't get medical help, that it was a sin or something like that. And then the child dies, like crazy. Or believing that, as I mentioned, like the spiritual leader is sufficient for, say, therapy. And oftentimes these spiritual leaders that I've seen both in my clients and in my personal life, they have no training in psychotherapy or psychology or anything. They just have their religious and spiritual teachings, but they have no actual training. And so, they're not actually using trained professionals to get help in a very specific area. They're trusting that faith will heal medical illnesses, for example, refusing life-saving medical treatment. So there's also a need for frequent admiration and praise from others with how spiritual they are. There's a lot of putting on airs, and maybe on social media, they brag about how holy they are and they're doing this and they're doing that. And, a lot of criticizing of other people's faiths, for example, and it's on full display for everyone else to see. So there's just very much this focus on appearances and look how special and important I am. And that's in common with the other types of narcissism as well. Again, control over others is valued. This is big, big, big with all forms of narcissism. Control is out in front and important to the narcissist. They must have control over other people at all times. That helps them feel powerful, helps them feel good about themselves. It gives them a sense of identity. They are control freaks oftentimes. They cannot stand not having a sense of control. So authoritarian leaders, for example, will be highly valued. And again, interesting how a lot of their who they look up to, say biblically, for example, is the kind of Old Testament God. So very authoritarian, very judgy, let's send floods and kill thousands of people because they're not good enough and sinning, So you'll see them align with kind of the dark side of religion and spirituality, as opposed to the, say, who Jesus actually was, for example, of coming for all people, regardless of who they are, and being accepting of all people, regardless of whether they were the sinners of society or not, and being very open-hearted and caring, right? So they will align with like the dark, judgmental side, as opposed to the more light and kind and loving and accepting side of whatever their spiritual tenets are. And hypocrisy. Oh my gosh, this is a big thing. I'm sure if you've had experience with, unfortunately, with people like this, you will see the blatant hypocrisy of, do as I say, but not as I do. That they will abuse people in private, but then have this holier than thou facade that they present to public. This is so common with abusers of all types. Of people in the community will oftentimes think that they're just amazing human beings, that they're just so kind and nice and so helpful, which they will appear that way to other people. But behind closed doors is where the abuse is happening. And behind closed doors is where they're treating people just abominably and traumatizing people. So very hypocritical. You're not going to see who they are being carried through in different contexts and different relationships, and being very much the same regardless of context and environment and relationships. So yeah, some of my closing thoughts, because I've had personal experiences with this type of abuse. I find it very sad, because I think every human being, no matter where you come from in the world, you're exposed oftentimes to the religion that your parents favor, which can be a very helpful thing in many cases, especially if it's used in this kind of pro-social, loving, kind, let's help other human beings, let's be a light to humanity. That the best parts of religion can actually add some really positive things in the world. But then what we see are abusers of all types will use religion then as an extra tool to harm their loved ones or people around them. And that's really when it gets really ugly and really damaging. And that's not only happened to me, it's happened to many of my clients. And then not only are they struggling to heal like complex PTSD and love themselves and see the world in a more positive light, but then what's happened is their abuser has damaged their ability to believe in God and to believe in an afterlife, and to believe that there's actually a purpose and a reason to be here. And so now we're having to untangle that and find a new sense of purpose and meaning that makes sense to them. So this is kind of one of the most, I think, insidious and damaging ways to hurt a child, especially a developing child who has no capability or ability to think for themselves when we're very young. It's a form of brainwashing. So a lot of my clients come in and they have such negative messaging installed into how bad they are and shameful and sinful and damned and going to hell, that it takes a long time to literally, like a cult, like they've been programmed with these cult beliefs, to undo the shame and the self-hatred and the fear that has been installed in them from abusive parents who really have these controlling narcissistic type of beliefs. And so this is something I'm quite passionate about in healing, because of the psychological and emotional and even spiritual and soul damage that this type of abuse does to individuals. So if you have had this type of abuse, thankfully, there is healing. Not only can you heal from complex trauma, but you can find a new sense of purpose and meaning that feels safe to you and feels safe to your nervous system and is loving and is not harmful. Each person's journey is unique, of course, but I just wanted to let you know that there is hope out there, not to give up. Feel free to check out my other videos on healing trauma. I've got lots of really wonderful videos, especially with IFS, internal family systems therapy, which does a lot of parts work. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them below. I'd be happy to try and answer them. And I always appreciate all of you for watching my channel and my videos. It helps me grow. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Take care, everybody.